Hi, Zizaran here with a short TLDR video on how I feel about the Manifesto. For those that do want a longer video, I do have my full reaction posted as well last night, which is unedited, just if you want to see me react and stuff and talk about it as it's happening. This is going to be a shorter one with like the cliff notes and highlights and more thought out reply. Now, I do want to preface this video by saying both for better and for worse, we don't really know how the changes are and feel until we try them. There were quite a lot of good changes in the patch, but there are a lot that I feel is kind of out of touch and very weird as well. So it's an interesting mix. But generally, the best time to see if it's good or bad is like 2 to 4 weeks into a league when you're also able to give more feedback from actually playing it. So we'll see how it is when it's fleshed out, but let's talk about what I liked and what I didn't like. So first we'll talk about the skills, and they are closing the gap between bad and good support gems. This can be very interesting. Obviously, they're lowering a lot of the damage, and we're getting a damage nerf as players. Now, I do think this is a good thing because they seem to be targeting especially a damage nerf at the higher level. So for like, you know, nerfing the very, very high percent, and hopefully from what they're saying, I hope this is actually the case of what ends up happening and not just something they are saying. But I hope that like the lower end, like 4-link and 5-link damage is in fact close to untouched as they are saying. And it's more about the, you know, once you're starting to get like 5 to 20 million damage, that is more nerfed. And I think that would be a good thing. Personally, I don't know about you guys, and I would love replies from people. And again, when you are making a reply, let us know a little bit about where you're coming from, how many hours you play, etc. Because it's cool to see like what type of player likes what kind of changes. But personally, I'm a very big proponent, or I really don't like when we can one-shot bosses. Whenever I have enough damage that I can just go up and burst Shaper and Uber Elder, it is kind of fun in a way, but it also takes quite a lot away from the challenge of the game. And it does feel really, really good when you're finally able to take down a boss that you aren't just, you know, one-shotting. So I think there is quite a lot of inherent value in actually fighting the bosses. So I'm a big fan that they are trying to move towards that. And it might take some time to actually get there, and I'm not expecting this patch to nail it on the first go. I am hoping that we are going to see quite a big change in meta skills. I am hoping that Slams and Blade Blast will not be the #1. Archmage certainly won't be. We'll talk about that later, but there's some interesting changes here. Slams and Fortify are both nerfed. Slams also sound like they could be very strong. There are, like even through the nerf, there are some very, very cool interactions with like slam totems and stuff that could still make them really, really strong. Fortify might also be too strong. I think he got a 50 or 60% nerf, which is very big, but Fortify was already very strong at like the base level. So it might still be strong enough. We'll have to wait and see until we have like all the final numbers and can calculate it in Path of Building and stuff like that. But they are nerfing Fortify, and they don't necessarily need to completely butcher everything every nerf. I am more of a fan of more mild nerfs. So there are some crit changes to crit. There's a lot of changes with Assassin. We'll go more in depth later because a lot of it is also tied to Flask changes. So we'll cover crit there. Archmage got a very, very heavy nerf. I think it was a 60% nerf, and the Enduring Mana Flask is nerfed. So with Enduring Mana Flask, most of the builds that really need that can get away with like a level 34, 24, or 36 Flask because they mostly need like a continuous stream of mana. It doesn't really, the amount wasn't that important. It's more the fact that it like never ends. So for most builds, Enduring Mana Flask is fine. So the Enduring Mana Flask nerf is a lot worse for Archmage because like Archmage is getting nerfed and the Enduring Mana Flask, and there might be more in the Ascendancies or something like that. So we don't know what else is happening. I did actually make a video that I don't think we're going to release because it's kind of redundant now that we know what's changing, but like some predictions and stuff. And I said I wouldn't be surprised if Archmage got nerfed, but I don't necessarily believe that it needs to be nerfed because it's just a really cool way to build skills. The only thing that's very, very strong on Archmage is the fact that you're scaling both damage and defense from the same stat, and it ends up being a little bit too strong. So we're going to talk about Flasks now. We do have a separate video talking about a lot of the changes on Flasks and how I feel about them, but there are some new ones that are announced here. So obviously a lot of Flask stuff got like vaporized or nuked from orbit, and I think this is something, and I talked a little bit about this to my Twitch chat, and most people are very happy that they are reworking Flasks. But at least me and most people are fully expecting them not to nail it on the first try. I think a lot of us are mentally preparing ourselves for this to feel quite bad, and that it's not something they're going to nail on the first go around. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 doesn't feel that good on our wrists either, so something needs to change. So I will happily suffer one league of something feeling like dog shit and hope that they'll nail it eventually. Maybe they do nail it on the first try, but I think it's a very hard problem to fix. Yeah, so Aquamarine Flask is getting buffed, and it's actually a lot better than I thought because of the way it works. It'll actually allow you to move and do actions while frozen at a reduced effect. So getting like 70-80% reduced freeze effect, etc. As long as you're not fully frozen and can't move, that actually sounds pretty okay. That's more like getting chilled. So Aquamarine actually might be in my setup. Granite should still be fairly useful. I think I mixed them a little bit. I thought Basalt was the one that was still going to be useful, but Basalt looks kind of garbage. I would say it got nuked from orbit. But curses are going to be a lot harder to deal with now. If you like, you're probably going to skip Temp Chains maps. Vulnerability is going to be pretty dangerous because of bleeds. You kind of want to be bleed immune with that. And then also you have LA weakness maps are going to be pretty okay and give your character a reason to overcap elemental resist. And that is quite good. So the LA weakness thing, that's great. Temp Chains are just going to feel terrible. But yeah. Diamond Flask was butchered. Instead of critical strikes are now lucky, it is increased critical strike chance by 100%. That's very rough. Very rough. That's an insanely huge change. Very big blow for crit. However, I do think that is very cool in some ways because that makes it a little bit more viable against bosses in a way that, I don't know about you guys, but have you ever had a crit build and you really feel like you have to just log out when your flasks are done because you do like no damage without your crit very high? So building around that sounds a lot better. So that's like a silver lining there, I guess, but Diamond Flask is pretty bad. Now, it is 100% increased crit strikes, and obviously we can get 100% crit strikes as a suffix from Unveils. Quicksilver got butchered as well, more than I believed it would. The adrenaline stat is now like, what, 6% movement speed or something? It was very low. So definitely like there will be a focus on Alchemist now. However, an Alchemist of Adrenaline might be very, very hard to run. It's something I don't even recommend for most players right now because it's hard for most players to keep them up permanently. So now it might actually be very, very stressful and annoying to keep them up permanently, even for people that are speedrunning. There are big changes to Unique Fast as well. We don't know the full extent. Bottle Faith might be dead because Sulfur had a big rework where like crit chance is not increased on enemies, like base crit chance. So Bottle Faith might be pretty rough. Dying Sun sounds fairly powerful still, and maybe some new interesting stuff you can do with it. So Dying Sun, not too worried about. So crit is getting changed a little bit too. Assassin looks like it's taking a huge nerf, especially to like poison crit. So Assassin Blade Blast might be dead. We don't know yet. Obviously, we'll see at patch notes. Gotta remember, last league, a lot of people were saying Blade Blast builds are dead. They were obviously still the strongest build. And the same with like Fire Burst. There's been announced the nerf there. A lot of the time when something gets nerfed, it's still the strongest build. So don't panic too much just from a nerf. We gotta see how severe it is. Some crit gems are being buffed, like Nightblade, critical support, etc. Are being buffed. It's quite a substantial buff to critical damage support, 35% more crit. And it should be fairly interesting to see how that pans out. But obviously, the Diamond Flask alone, very, very big nerf. So for player mitigation and us tanking damage, it seems to be a lot of a bigger focus on more investment to achieve immunities and like less damage. And it seems like you're more gonna have to be like, okay, I don't want to be frozen. I'm gonna get freeze immunity. This could end up being good. Right now, it's like so achievable to get ailment immune that most people, especially on hardcore, it's almost mandatory. You always end up going for it. So having to choose might be a good thing. Some Ascendancies got removed their ailment immunity from... I don't think we fully know, but Saboteur might still have its ailment immunity, making it very, very strong. Raider has 50%, which is very strong because it's very easy to get the remaining 50%. Inquisitor fully lost it. As soon as I read that Raider still has 50%, I was like, oh, maybe they'll leave Inquisitor with like 20 to 50%. It's gone. It has nothing. But a lot of the stuff they're doing with ailment immunity and stuff is pretty cool. I actually play without ailment immunity myself quite a lot, so this isn't necessarily the worst thing for me. And so far, a lot of these changes I'm quite okay with. A lot of the skill rebalances I think are really cool. I'm okay with like pushing back and nerfing a little bit there and hoping for like a meta change. That's like the main thing I want. I don't just want nerfs and us feeling bad, because that does feel bad even for me. I think it's not that fun. But I also don't want the game turning into Diablo 3. The Flask rework as well. I'm scared, but hopefully it's the right choice. And same with the mitigation stuff. That's also like in a good way. But some of the mobility skill changes, I'm not a big fan of those. I think that already feels quite good right now for the game. Smoke Mine got nuked from orbit. I'm kind of surprised if we keep using it, but we'll see. Second Wind was heavily nerfed. Flame Dash was heavily nerfed. There's going to be a lot more running and walking around right now. It might end up being a good thing. This is one of the changes I like the least. Very not a big fan of these. I would say right now, like Blink Arrow, Whirling Blades feel atrocious. They really feel bad to use, regardless of the other ones. They just feel bad to use. They're not good options. I would rather run. So I was very, very sad when they commented and said like, oh, we want to bring Flame Dash and stuff in line with the other ones that already feel bad. I would way rather go the other way and make Blink Arrow and Lightning Warp in line with like, and Whirling Blades feels really bad. It literally is a skill gen that makes you feel like you're lagging. I hate it. I hate Whirling Blades. And if you do get an insane amount of investment into it, it starts going backwards because your ping is too high or too low. I don't know. It goes backwards. It's weird. So very, very sad that they did the ones that already feel good and made them worse. Flame Dash should still be okay, but I don't know if the others will. Next up, this is the thing that I like the least. And some of the changes were good, but let's talk about the Veiled and Ashlane slams. I'm personally very, very upset about how the game's been going in the sense of less and less chase items. Now, the Ashlane stuff adds more of a chase back in where you can make really, really strong items. It's quite a lot of work and some RNG involved. So I really liked it. And they have, there were some changes I liked, some changes I didn't. We'll talk a little bit about them in specifics because this is probably the most important change for me. So they no longer craft as crafted modifiers. So if you like double veil something or you veil something and you get a prefix and you needed a suffix, you can no longer just click remove. You could do that with, say you had an item with just 2 stats on it and you weren't able to block the prefixes. Like you can still block a prefix and then force a suffix, but you can no longer like veil it, see that it is a prefix and then remove craft if you're not understanding what changed. So you can no longer remove the craft after veiling the item before unveiling it. That's whatever. That's fine. That probably shouldn't be doable anyway. You can still do like if you have a mod with like 2 prefixes and you craft a 3rd prefix and veil it, that should still go as a suffix. So that's fine. If it wasn't for the next change, which is the worst part, because that makes the first thing not work the way I want it to or think it should. Ashlane's crafting bench adds a veiled modifier. Now first removes a random modifier. So it's riskier to use it as a later step of an item rather than being an obvious final step because it's very consistent to the modifier pool. I think this is terrible. A forced annulment in such a way, I think it's very bad. And it makes it so that a large amount of your player base is just not going to use it for the insane risk. I don't like that. I don't like that. I do like risk, but it doesn't have to be on everything. We already have it in other aspects of the game. I think a healthy combination of something being risky and something having deterministic outcomes is good. There are some other notable changes as well, some that are very good. They are removing some poison from Assassin and from Coralitos, and they're giving it more general, like they're buffing the damage by, was it 50 or 60%? This could mean that I might be able to do things like anime weapon poison build again. That would be very cool. It's been one of my favorite builds of all time. I would love to play that again, but anime weapon has not been in a good place, so we haven't really been able to play it. But generally pretty excited about the poison changes. A lot of those look really cool, and poison builds can be pretty cool to play to begin with. There is another very big change that I'm very, very much a big fan of, and that is a visual change to shock on bosses and players. And if you see, you can see the percentage shock on both the player and the boss. So you know exactly how much you're shocking. And if you are able to get an actual 50% shock on the boss, or just a 3% shock. I'm very surprised that hasn't been added earlier, but it is very cool. Triggered effects still require paying mana. Mjolnir does not. So Path of Mjolnir might be making a big resurgence So cost freeze might be on the way out. We'll see. Grinding Games said that they are confident that cock builds will still be fun and powerful. I hope so. If they aren't, I'm going to tweet at them in one month and say something like, hey, this wasn't true, was it? But I hope they are honest about that and that it will still be strong. We'll see. Because I think they're one of the most iconic builds in Path of Exile, and I think it's important that they're always functional in some way. Not necessarily with the same abilities, but cock is just, it's fun playing with your cock. And if you're wondering about the changes, Arcane Surge no longer gives you cast speed, and it does increased mana regen rather than percentage of your mana per second. So provides slightly more mana recovery at low levels, but it's bad at high levels. So like a third nerf to Archmage, I guess. Essence Strain got buffed. Dot multi-weapons, instead of it being a prefix, it is a suffix now for damage over time multiplier. They even say you'll be able to make bigger and better dot multi-weapons than ever before. Is this a game to you? Do you know how many Essence Strength guides I've made? Also, Fire Burst is getting nerfed, but I think they'd have to nerf that a lot for it not to be strong. Like, it's giga busted right now. Same with a big nerf. If anything, it'll just make the majority of the player base panic, not go for it early, and you'll be able to make a strong build for cheap. Another change that I don't really like was the Onslaught Abyssal is completely removed. There's no more Onslaught from Abyssal, so we actually have to invest or get Onslaught in different ways. I thought this was okay because you didn't get it for bosses, and you had to invest into it. But I guess that makes, is it Redeemer that has Onslaught on chest? I think it's Redeemer. So they're stronger now, I guess. But yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time. This was like a TLDR of all the things I felt was the most important. Honestly, I'm very like, I don't know, 60% happy, 70% happy with the Manifesto. There's not necessarily anything that I'm giga excited about or looking forward to, but I do think a lot of the things they're trying to fix is important for the game long term. So we'll see how it feels. I think honestly, like the first month and a half of a PoE League is exciting, even if it was just a fucking reset. So I'm pretty much always excited for PoE Leagues. Let me know how you guys feel, and let me know how you think about the video and my thoughts. Sub if you liked the video. But the most important thing of all, try to die less than I do.